Welcome, welcome. All right, I see 1 o'clock here.
Yeah. I started watching it, but I didn't finish it. Oh,
We should just make sure everyone's on mute.
But anyways, she.
Cool. Okay, likewise. Thank you.
We can all mute ourselves, and then we're going to get going here.
109. Spits. Jeez.
Go cameras off. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to our second webinar of 2024. I see 1 o'clock. In fact, I see 1:01 on my end, so we're going to get going here. So today's Navigating Real Life Risks in Aquatic Settings by Gary Sanger. So if I can have Gary just go over to the next slide, we'll quickly run through some etiquette, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with at this point. But if we can just encourage everyone to keep their mic on mute as well as cameras, by all means, enjoy. The webinar is going to be recorded and posted on the Lifesaving Society website. So if you need to tune out for whatever reason, you're always able to take a look at it after the fact. We ask that all the questions are saved for our Q&A session at the end, and we will likely only be using the chat. So we'll stay muted and we can type all our questions in the chat box. And if you need any support while managing a major incident, Gary will also provide his information on a few slides later. One final comment that's not on the screen here, we will be issuing out a survey via email probably shortly after that speaks to and allows us to get some feedback on how the session today went. Gary, I'll get you to go over to the next slide. I'll introduce the man of the hour here.
Oh,
next slide. Thank you. Thank you. So, after 38 years of dedicated service, Gary has traded in his swim trunks for a well-deserved retirement, but not before we got him for a few more conferences and webinar appearances. So during his tenure with the City of Toronto, he navigated the waves of responsibility with finesse, ensuring that every splash, dive, and cannonball was met with safety and fun, and the supervisor of community recreation of parks, forestry, and recreation. With a career that spanned nearly 4 decades, Gary's expertise in water safety was as deep as the ocean itself. And as the former vice president of safety standards with the Lifesaving Society, he was the lighthouse guiding affiliates, chairs, and council members through the murky waters of risk management. Whether it was navigating the choppy seas of pool maintenance or taming the wild currents of emergency response, Gary's wisdom was an anchor for many in the aquatic community. Gary's career has taken him into the depths of aquatic safety, where he's navigated the waters of risk management with precision. But Gary's aquatic adventures weren't confined to the pool lanes alone. He's not only an aquatic professional, but an aquatic educator, spreading his knowledge across Canada like ripples in a pond. Gary's anecdotes about real-life trials and triumphs in handling catastrophic incidents are like buoys of wisdom, guiding others through stormy waters. Despite his serious work, Gary's sense of humor is as refreshing as a dip in a cool pool. He's known to lighten the mood with a water-related joke or pun, making even the driest topics flow smoothly. Gary doesn't just swim with the current, he makes waves of change wherever he goes. And with that, I'm going to pass it over. Take it away, Gary.
Nico, that was a lot of work. My goodness, thank you for that. Anyway, welcome. We have a full house, I understand. And I'm hearing, just a reminder, please be on mute, thank you. We have a full house. The nice weather out there reminds me of the summer operation, which I know that you're all getting ready for, and I'm quite aware of just how busy you are. So I have 15 minutes to fire through a bunch of different things, and then Nico is going to finish it off with a series of questions. So fire your questions into the chat, and we'll go from there. One of the rules for presenting is don't have too many slides. I'll tell you right now, I have a bunch of slides. Some of them I'm going to reference very quickly. But at least you'll be able to review them afterwards with the recording. I just want you to have them in advance, and then if you had any questions, that you can look into that, or again, email me if you like, and we'll go from there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You all know what the Lifesaving Society used to say certifies 500,000. Now with our Learn to Swim programs, we're up well over 1.5 million. So that's really great news. Here's what we're going to talk about today. And again, I'm hoping that I'm going to give you information Some of it you might find intimidating, but I would rather you have the information now with questions that you can deal with before you have an accident. I did a session at the York Region Aquatic Council meeting yesterday. It was interesting because somebody came up and said, you know, it's just a matter of time. It's going to happen. And I thought, well, hopefully not. But the question is, will you be ready for it when it does happen? And that's really what we're going to look at today. I'm going to give you some advice on how to deal with planning it, dealing with media, dealing with police, and just what this looks like if it does happen, because it is manageable. I just want you to be ready for it. Again, we're going to look a lot about the steps to take, and the information is all available. And we're going to get into some information you can find on the website, which I think you'll find quite interesting. And it's something you should probably review, but I'll walk you through that as we go today. Okay. So as we get started, risk management is really about something that you do every day. You do it every day in your work life, in your personal life. And the steps that are logical. But if you want to write it down, it's number one, you identify risk. Number two, you evaluate how significant that risk might be. Develop steps to control it and then monitor it. If I was doing a session right now, I like to use the example of the power cord that's running across the ground to power the equipment, which is I'm walking across over the course of the session. Is it a risk? Sure, a minor risk. If I had to evaluate how significant it was, it might probably be a trip hazard. And what are steps that I can take to mitigate that risk? Well, duct tape, or do something to fasten it down so it limits the amount of possibility of trip hazard. I like these pictures on the bottom. I always find it interesting that public health is always about water clarity. For me, it's about our ability to see the pool bottom. And I've said this 1,000 times in my career, and I'll say it 1,000 times again. It is so important that somebody, at least one person, sees all points of the pool, including the pool bottom, all the time. So as part of your scanning, it's not, for me, while you scan and you should see the pool bottom every 10 to 15 seconds, all kinds of discussion on the amount of time. What my concern is that there are many times we see portions of the pool that you cannot see. The person is positioned in such a way that they can't see a corner of the deep end. And it's wrong. I mean, and this is how the wind can change that dynamic too. And this is how, for example, a lane swimmer, you've got all these lane swimmers swimming across and back and forth through the pool, and you can't see the bottom of the pool, but what's the big concern? Because they're all lane swimmers. Well, chances are if there's a medical emergency with a lane swimmer and somebody submerges to the bottom, it's not the lifeguard that's going to see them. It's the swimmer that's going overhead that looks down and sees the person and triggers the alarm. So for me, and I'll say it again, it is critically important that somebody, at least one person, sees all points of the pool, including the pool bottom, all of the time. So aquatic incidents, and I'll speak to we had a number in my career with the city, but there were 3 in particular that we dealt with over the years that were devastating. And our lawyers for this city will openly admit that they had no idea of the level of liability that these swimming pools possess until the accidents happened. And to this day, since amalgamation, the largest claims still brought against the city, certainly that I'm aware of, are 3 aquatic claims. In all these cases, nobody died, but these people were pulled from the bottom of the pool. They said sustained horrible brain injuries. And it cost the city millions of dollars, not only in medical costs, but in legal costs also. It took years to resolve these matters. And, at the end of the day, lives changed. And that's without a doubt. So I'll always remember our director of litigation at the time of these incidents, actually wonderful. We've dealt with her a number of times. After the first incident, I remember being called to City Hall and sitting in a meeting with commissioners and everything else. It was a 27-year-old female who had submerged to the bottom of the pool and was there for 5 minutes during a bad lifeguard change. The lifeguard got on the tower, didn't see her on the bottom for a period of minutes. And I remember being in the meeting, and I looked across at Diana, our lead attorney, and said, so what now? What happens now? And it was interesting because she looked back at me and she said, I don't know, why don't you tell me? And we began a story together where I spent the first 2-3 months really just teaching her all about the Lifesaving Society, all about regulations, all about standards and policies and procedures. She had no idea about this stuff. And by the same token, I had no idea about the stuff that she taught me in terms of privileged and confidential information and exchange of information, how to testify. So, and then after that incident, 6.5 years it took to resolve that first incident, but afterwards, she said, Gary, come up to my office and I'm going to show you all of the files. And I want you to go through them and pick out information that you think would be helpful and take it and use it for training and share it with whoever you like. It's all public knowledge now. So she was wonderful. But she did say that swimming pool accidents can lead to tragic human suffering and loss, and exposing municipalities to the most serious claims it will ever face. The reality is your swimming pools, if you have them, whether your managers and directors and commissioners are aware of it, they are the greatest source of risk in most of your municipalities, and always will be. And that's why they should be run effectively. I'd love to ask the question now and put up your hands, but how many of your direct managers and supervisors above you truly understand the significance of a major aquatic emergency? I hope the answer is yes, but if not, this might help. So in terms of planning for your worst case scenario, you see these patterns, right? These things that happen where the language barriers are becoming a significant aspect of these issues. Medical condition, and I love doctors, but I hate when they say that, you're overweight, you have issues medically, you need to be more active, you need to go swimming. They pretty much, or if you suffer from a seizure, you just never swim unless you swim in front of a lifeguard. They pretty much hand over the care of their patients to us because they want them to be more active. And that adds an element of risk to what we do. Levels of supervision. I spent 8 weeks in Dominican a few months ago. And in that 8 weeks, I was involved in 5 rescues, 3 of them involving children. And all of those, the riptides were coming on the beach in a series of days. And I watched parents having no understanding of what it was like to supervise their children. And in one in particular, gentleman holding a baby with 2 other children in the water, a rip came in and took one of the children. He had the infant, and it was like he was going to throw her onto the sand so he could go get the other 2 kids. And I tore off down the beach, and I literally went in the water, had to reach around, and I found this. He grabbed one of his daughters, and I had to grab the other daughter, and I pulled her out. But it drove me crazy. And I know you're all like it. You go down south, and you're always watching the water, and it's unfortunate, it's the nature of our business, but it drives me crazy how in an instant things can change dramatically. And then we also see that it always happens when you least expect it. That first bad accident happened on the second last day of summer. There were only 6 people in the pool and a few lifeguards posted. It's never in the middle of a hot summer when you're at capacity and you're expecting. It's always when you least expect it. And then as we always see in these incidents, it's the sequence of events. It's never like you can say that person or that policy or that design caused the incident. It's always a series of different things that happens that aligns. And if somebody doesn't interject in that sequence of events, it can lead to tragic, human suffering. That day on the beach for me, I mean, that girl might have been fine. Maybe the dad would have pulled her out. Maybe somebody else would have pulled her out. But, you wonder, had I not been there at that moment, things could have changed dramatically. But, and again, we'll never know. She's fine, probably doing fine. I'm not sure to this day that the parents understand the significance of what was happening, but who knows? At least we know that the child's out walking. And this for me is my worst case scenario, the drowning of a child. We know there's late night swimmers in all of our pools now. It's becoming a real, common and popular thing to do. And and it's tragic when these people hurt themselves or, spinal injuries or whatever, but you can measure the risk when you're an adult. When you're a child, if a child drowns, we've failed. We failed as staff, parents have failed. It's a huge obligation to ensure that children are properly taken care of in and around the water. So I love this phrase, how quickly you recover from an incident is reflective of how well you were prepared. And I use this as an example. Our general manager years ago was brand new to the city. And we had a suspected spinal at Monarch Park Pool. A young boy had bounced off the board. And staff treated it. I got the call. Yeah, he's stable. He's on a board. EMS has taken him. Do you guys have a second board there? No. All right, get a second board there and get that thing reopened really quickly. Okay, we got it, Garrett. We finished our reports and we'll do it. And then Global News, I guess, decided to send a helicopter over the top of the pool to cover the news story. And I remember getting a call saying, you need to get down to Monarch Park to manage the media blitz now because this child up is injured. And I remember going, why? We're going to open that pool again as soon as we get a board back there. That's how we roll. I think they were all surprised with how well we were able to just manage it and get back on, get back up and start it up again. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't have the second board there, so we could have opened right away. But again, it's just that's the stuff about being prepared and reopening quickly and moving on as much as you can. Obviously, the more significant incidents are going to cause some degree of closure, and you've got to manage that. But again, how quickly you recover is reflective of how well you're prepared. So the whole point of due diligence is about ensuring that you're doing everything to provide an environment that is safe and reasonable and caring. Be aware, be objective, proactive. No, that's all technical stuff. But I use this. If you see these two slides, this first slide, this is Agincourt Pool. I'm lucky enough to finish my career here with the city. I've been working downtown. I moved to Scarborough. And this facility, during a number of incidents, blackout, the ice storm in particular, on Christmas Eve, we had 500 people sleeping in this facility because there was no power in some local Scarborough area. They decided to make it the major emergency facility for Eastern Toronto because it had a rink and there's power, and they got it all ready for any major emergency that could happen. And then a major emergency did happen. It burned. On January 30th of 2019, just before that pandemic, a fire ripped through the walls on the outside of that and took the entire ceiling of the pool down. It burned for 40 hours. So here again, you plan for a major emergency facility in case something goes wrong out there. And sure enough, the facility actually becomes where the major emergency happens. And again, you just got to get ready for it. And within days of this incident, we didn't actually lose a single program. We just stripped off all the instructional programs that were happening in this facility and removed the instruction. And like the whole instructor and all the programs just moved it to an adjacent facility across the entire Scarborough area. And again, I think they were amazed with how quickly we can manage it, but it's like, you just do it. You just have to get it done. So 3 years and, 4 years and 30, it came into $32 million this facility was repaired. And as part of that repairing, everything in my office I lost. I had paintings that my dad did and everything else, and everything was gone. That's not something I ever planned on also, but it's again one of those reasons why you want to back up files and ensure that you've got backup information if something tragic does go wrong in your facility. So I get to say in my career, I was lucky enough to build the Regent Park Aquatic Center, if you know it, and I was unlucky enough to burn down Agincourt. This is where I would hope the room would chuckle a bit, but I don't know that. But we did rebuild Agincourt, so no biggie. I referred to the website earlier, and we're going to get back to it. But again, when you get a chance, and after this webinar, go on and just flip through it. There's all kinds of great information. I'm partial to the information about safety management, but we're going to come back to that later. One of the things that you'll find in that website is what we call the suggested table of contents. This document came about after our first really bad accident, I'll tell you that. And what had happened was the lawyers wanted information, and they wanted it all kind of categorized into different things. And it actually filled 3 volumes of tabbed Sherlock-bound documents. And what was great about that is because the legal process is so lengthy and time-consuming, and often months will go by, you hear nothing, and then all of a sudden you would get a call, and they'll say, I need the following information, I need training information, or I need to know who, something about a specific incident or date or whatever. And with this document, this table of contents, you can flip. So what they would say, they would call and say, Gary, pick up volume 3 and flip the page or flip to tab 22. Explain to me what this means. It's the lawyers. They don't, and that saved us a lot of time being able to reference everything accordingly. But as you go through this document, again, it may be things that you can say, I've got that. I can prepare it right away. Some of the stuff you'll get afterwards, obviously, witness statements are not going to happen in advance. But just to be able to go through it to know that, okay, I know what it means. I have it already, or I know that I'll need to get it after the fact. It's a very, very helpful document, and it's one of the ones that are available on the site as we go. Now, I am mindful of the time, so I'm going to flip along. Emergency response kit, you should all have them in your facilities, and I'm not talking about the first aid kit that's in the pool office that you never touch, but it's the one you show the health inspector when they say, where's your full kit? This is an emergency response kit you keep somewhere in the building near your AED, so that, and we developed this one at Agincourt because we were having problems with adults falling on the ice without helmets on. spinal injuries or suspected spinal injuries. So we had this available, and one of the things that we had in it, there's a series of different things there, were these, if you look to the bottom right of the screen, you can see these pads. We did that because after one incident, we had one of our staff immobilizing a person on the ice. And their knees actually and this is probably something I should have picked up on, because they immobilized it for about 20 minutes, their knees actually sunk down in the ice and they actually made divots in the ice. Like, I should have probably replaced them at some point, but anyway, but we realized that these pads are really helpful for ensuring that staff are comfortable when we're kneeling on a full surface. So, but just to have this available, grab the bag, grab the AED. We had a young woman who was hit by a car in front of the facility. Grab the bag, grab the AED, and you've got everything ready to go when it arrives. So, and again, outside of the actual first aid kit or kit that you have in your pool office. I did reference in the explanation that I was going to talk about a few incidents. I wish I had more time for this, but there certainly are 3 incidents that have happened that I've been involved in outside of Toronto that are certainly life-changing. And in my career, I think maybe 15, 16 times I've received a call. And the call has been, we just pulled somebody out of the water. And it was always the next question. And I always train the staff on this. What's the first question you ask? Like, what do I need to know right now? And, you know, they would say, well, you know, where you're calling from or whatever. I thought, no, what I need to know is the victim breathing right now? Is the person you pulled from the water breathing? And if the answer is yes to that, then chances are we're going to be okay, because everybody knows what to do and the staff are well trained. But if the person's not breathing, that gets a different level of response. Now I need to know more information. Where are they? Are they been taken in hospital? Because now you have a situation that's going to get more complicated for sure. If I know they're breathing though, then I can start to think, okay, who's calling? Where are you calling from? Where's the victim right now? They're with EMS. Perfect. And now I can think about my priority then becomes, after the victim is taken care of, then I can start to think about, okay, what do I need to do to protect my staff? What do I need to do to ensure that they're properly cared for at this time? But that's the most important thing. Are they breathing right now? So I'm not sure if you've seen the Are You Ready video that we did, but we flew out to Nanaimo to film Dr. Steve Bierman, if you know him. He's a professor at the University of British Columbia. He let us use his teaching labs at the hospital, but they had a horrible incident involving a young girl at West Lodge Lake swimming area on Nanaimo, which is on the island of Nanaimo, or on the island at Nanaimo. And we went over there, and the city of Nanaimo was wonderful. They were very open to our discussions. They said you could interview our staff on the incident, and we went over. And we ended up talking to not even a young lifeguard, a seasoned veteran lifeguard, but anyway, the story goes that this little girl named Isabel was in this day camp, the only day she was going to be in this camp for the day, because her mom had to go for an interview on the mainland, and her mom's girlfriend ran a day camp, and the day camp said, well, we're going to be going to the beach that day. So Isabel's mom was clear with her. She's not a strong swimmer. She has to wear a life jacket. And that day she took Isabel to the beach to join the camp, and the last time the mother saw Isabel was when she was fastening her life jacket on. And I know Mike Shane always says this. People think, you put a life jacket on a child, you don't have to worry about it. Well, the reality is, if you can take a life jacket off, then there's a sense of danger there. We have to ensure the child is actually wearing a life jacket. Isabel she was seen swimming back and forth with the life jacket to this raft, back and forth, everything was fine. And the last time she was seen, she was about 6 feet offshore, standing in knee-deep water with no life jacket. And she's pulled from the water. She passed. This was the note that was left on the rock. There's a memorial rock that was left on the beach. And this was the note that her parents had left her. For me, we interviewed this young man, and we rolled probably 45 minutes of video while we were talking to him. And we didn't know, but when we interviewed him on that day, this was the first time he'd actually discussed the incident after, and he had never returned to the beach. We actually went to the beach later on that day, but that was the first time he'd gone back there. But I just want you to see the impact that this event had on this young man. This is not some young lifeguard, starting his career. This is a seasoned veteran lifeguard, trainer, MLS examiner, but just watch the response of him that day. It was just, and again, 45 minutes of video we ran. This is the only portion we could really use.
It was a hot day. It was a really smoking hot day. And our beach was busy right from the get-go at 11 in the morning. The incident happened probably about 10 after 2. I'd just come back from my lunch break. I was sitting in my chair, watching my water, and a patron came running up towards the beach from the water, waving, and I kind of looked like they were waving at people, like, hello, hello, kind of a greeting, and then I realized they were waving at me, and that there was somebody behind him carrying a child. And it took a split second to realize that it wasn't right. Something was wrong. So I jumped out of my chair and I ran down, and they put Isabel in my arms, and I knew right away.
That was a tough day. We spoke to the manager also afterwards, and again, it was one thing that happened at one moment at that place, and simply because a child removed her life jacket. And I'll always say that I have nothing but respect for all of you who run beaches, waterfronts, because I mean, watching a swimming pool is one thing, but watching a body of water when you can't see the pool from the bottom, so you can't see all parts of the operation, I find that a little nerve-wracking. But again, that speaks to the amount of supervision that I think is required for waterfront and beach operations. But anyway, information about Isabel is all there. Ironic, at the time of the incident, I was as we were investigating the incident, we were on our way across on the ferry, and I ended up calling a former supervisor of Scarborough that ended up, I know he moved to BC. And sure enough, he lived in Nanaimo, and he only lived a few streets from this, and he actually heard the ambulances on that day and walked to the beach to see what was going on, and actually saw them loading Isabel into the ambulance at the time. It was just like, what are the chances of that? Anyway, I'm going to move on to another situation that happened, and this, for me, this is very personal. Jordan Eve, little boy, swimming in Alberta. Mike Shane was the expert witness who testified in this case in Alberta. Mike asked me to attend with him as an advisor, I guess, or to help with the report. And we visited this facility. We ended up meeting with the Crown Attorney, Christine Nugent, on the Monday that we arrived. And then we were to go to the facility to visit it the next day, or that afternoon. And they kind of walked us through what happened. And I was shocked, Mike was shocked. But anyway, Jordan, the story is that Jordan and his brother Daniel were spending the day with their grandfather, and they had gone to a car show in the morning, and they apparently had a really good morning. So the boys asked if he would take them, Orville Sailor, the grandpa's name. They asked if they would take the boys swimming, and he said, "Tell you what, let's go back and I'll talk to my daughter." His daughter was their mother, and we'll see. And then I do have a video that I took of the names when they were here for a pro conference a few years ago. We don't have time to run it today, but it's a pretty graphic video. But they went back. Jeanette, the mom, said, "Sure, you guys can go swimming, but you have to wear a life jacket. Again, you have to wear your life jacket." So they went off to the pool that day with their life jackets in hand. Nico, can you see the mouse there if I do this? Is it very visible? Okay, so they entered the front lobby. This is a huge facility. You can see the big pool. Slide operation, big change rooms. Orville and the two boys walked in here. He paid admission. Orville testified that he had a skin condition and wasn't allowed to swim. He went to sit in the viewing area here, and the boys got changed and went into the water. 44 people were in the pool at the time. There were 2 lifeguards in the entire facility. That's it. And there was 1 reception staff. From what we can account to, that's all the people that were in the facility that day. Just to give you some perspective on the size of this facility, Mr. Sailor sat out in this area here. This is a taut pool. Pan down. Now, this is where the non-aquatic supervisor told the staff, if you look behind here, that's where they wanted the single lifeguard on duty at the time to watch the pools, because there was a spa back here. But 1 lifeguard then would be posted here watching the entire facility. The other lifeguard was told that until they reached the number of 50 in the pool, that they were to be in the change rooms cleaning. So now you have 1 lifeguard watching 44 people in this pool. Slides in operation. This is the lifeguard's perspective, okay? So Jordan was last seen coming down the slide, and he was told by one of the lifeguards to take off his jacket. And then in that sequence of events, the lifeguards changed, and the new lifeguard comes out. Didn't know that Jordan was wearing a life jacket at the time. So never told him to put the life jacket back on. Jordan was last seen in the water here floating on some type of device. Might have been a life jacket. We don't know. And then something happened. He was found on the bottom of the pool here. The lifeguard didn't see him. A 20-year-old swam over top of him and saw his body on the bottom of the pool, and she shouted the alarm. Lifeguard blew the whistle, responded. The lifeguard in the change room couldn't hear the whistle. Somebody had to run in to scream to get her, and he was pulled from the water and later died in the hospital. So this is information that Mike and I are sitting with the Crown Attorney in the morning of the event, and she's showing us pictures and everything else, and I start to do the math, and she says, so just give me some perspective on what you think about this. And I remember saying to Mike, can I go first? And I remember making the comment that if this pool was in Ontario, it's unlikely this drowning would have ever happened. And she said, well, how can you be so sure? And I said, well, number 1, the size of the facility, but number 2, laws in Ontario, regulation in Ontario requires 1 lifeguard for every 30 people. In Alberta, it's actually 75, and in British Columbia, last time I heard, it was 100. So the lifeguards, when they testified in this case, said that they told the non-aquatic supervisor a number of times they couldn't see the pool bottom. They wanted more lifeguards. So the deal was that instead of being 75 to put the second lifeguard on, the deal was that he would let them put the second lifeguard on when they got to 50. Well, they were at 44. So they still had to keep 1 lifeguard in the change and 1 lifeguard on deck. The lifeguards testified that, there are times the kids would stop in the slide and they couldn't see them, so they installed a mirror up here so the lifeguard could go down the deck and look into the mirror to see if there were any kids actually in the channel. So as we're speaking to the Crown Attorney, I remember saying, like, this facility would have 5, 6 lifeguards, and certainly the second lifeguard who'd be posted at the time would be likely right in that chair right above where his body was found, as well as the 2 staff that would be required to run the slide. And then you're going to have probably a couple of staff to rotate, and then probably a person in charge. I mean, at least 5. Anyway, this is a picture of Jordan taken 5 days before he drowned. I will always remember the last day of testimony in the courtroom. And again, in Alberta, these things are done actually in courtroom with a judge. The inquest, it's a very formal process. Mike, as the expert witness, was the last to testify. You can find all this information in this publication. But I remember clearly them asking Mike, why are you here? Like, why isn't somebody from Alberta here to be our expert witness? And the answer was, somebody had just retired and they asked us to help, so we came out. And then he said, Mr. Shane, are the regulations the same in all provinces? And Mike said no. And then they said, well, it'll be different in Ontario than in Alberta. Yes. So what are the differences? And Mike said, well, there'll be more lifeguards on in Ontario for this pool than here. And after some discussion, I remember him saying, you mean to tell me, Mr. Shane, that children in Ontario are safer in public pools than children in Alberta? And Mike said, that's correct. And I remember him being so angry and saying, there's somebody, look, he looked at the Crown Attorney and he said, there's somebody in this courtroom that can speak on behalf of the Ministry of Health? The answer was no. And he said, I'm not ending this inquiry until somebody from the Ministry of Health is in this courtroom. And he adjourned. Mike and I had to go back had to catch a flight, so I had to go back to Calgary. And I remember saying I just had to go to the washroom. I said, Mike, I'll meet you in the car. And I went into the washroom, and Art Neve was in the washroom. That was Jordan's dad. When he testified, I remember being how impressed about and how stoic he was with, the information that he provided. But he was in the washroom that day, leaning over the sink, bawling his eyes out. And I chatted did I get him a hug? And he just said, I just want something good to come out of Jordan's room. And I remember him saying something would. So we ended up bringing the Neves into Ontario, a few years ago to speak, and we still have that video. I hope, perhaps at some point we can do a webinar when we have more time to run it. But, again, I did a session called The Greater Impact That Drownings Have on Communities and Families, and that's a good example of just how the lives in that family have changed forever as a result of that one incident. They don't see the grandfather anymore, for example. Just the changes in their lives, it's tragic. But which is why I guess I'm so adamant and have zero patience for people that don't understand why, including young lifeguards that don't understand their responsibilities and move around and, are on cell phones and things. It's not acceptable. I usually would stop for questions there, but that's kind of awkward. So I'm going to walk you through some stuff right now. And this is really, there's no standard rules on this sort of stuff, but it's just some things I've kind of come across over the years that I thought I would share. Dealing with police. This was an incident we had at Vaughan Road Academy at the time where, and it was great. It was, I shouldn't say great, but it was an incident that happened, and it was a good combination of why day camps and lifeguards can work together to ensure children are safe. But the story for me this day was that the police sent 6 officers in. They were bothering the lifeguards. They were trying to treat the young victim. It was chaos. Right? It was unnecessary. So when I arrived at the scene, I asked, again, this is the thing, it asked who the most senior person is. Identify yourself as the person who's investigating the incident for your division, for your department, for your organization. Tell them that you have a process in place to investigate. At the time, this facility was supervised by Minnie Fisher. So Minnie and I arrived together. And again, they had done such a great, the work was incredible. I explained to them how we have admission standards and we have a policy for banning children and we have sign-in procedures and as I'm doing this, Minnie's handing me all this paper, tons and tons of documents. And I said to the young detective, I said, listen, we have a process to follow. Let us gather all this information. And she said, I want copies. And I said, you'll be able to get copies, but we're at a school pool. I don't have a photocopier available for me here now. So tell you what, let us go through our process. We'll get all the information for you. And I'll drive it to the division tomorrow before noon and I'll drop it off. And she said, here's my cards. I gave her my card. And it was really kind of established a working relationship at that time. And I remember as she walked away, I could hear her talking to her fellow detective. And she said, she was shaking, you could see it. She was quite anxious too. And she said, I've never investigated something like this before. So I think it was helpful for her that she knew that we had a system to follow and she trusted us. Not that it's always going to work out that way, but I have found that if you do identify yourselves and let them know there's a process you follow, this is a serious event. We take it seriously, and we're going to get all the information to you. They were super cooperative. Young boy was fine. Everything was fine. Nothing happened as a result of this. But again, it was a good lesson learned for us. Going from there. Dealing with media. If there's a general assumption that lifeguards guard lives. So when they hear about somebody being pulled from a public pool, then usually it gets a lot of attention. Yes, certainly different municipalities across the province may get different levels of response to this, but certainly larger municipalities, if somebody's pulled from a public swimming pool, it's going to get typically some media attention. So I'm not sure where you fit in your organization in terms of spokesperson, but I do think it's when you have an aquatic background, that makes you a vital component when it comes to an aquatic incident. So when you're trained to properly speak to the media, it can be very helpful. So I don't even know if they do these anymore, but back in the day, it was called a media training course where you would basically, a 2 or 3 day program that I took where they would actually walk you through hypothetical interviews with reporters and they put a microphone in your face and you were expected to answer questions and what have you. But it was a good way of learning what to say and what not to say when an incident happened. So think about that. Again, if you're in a situation where they want you to speak to the media, are you prepared for that? And everything is on the record. So I just wrote this down. It doesn't, I mean, I was able to remember what I would say in an incident. I'm not going to read this, but I'm going to say that, microphone goes in your face and you can say, we're investigating an incident that happened today at Centennial Pool involving an 8-year-old boy. Staff were quick to respond to the emergency once they noticed it. We are conducting an ongoing investigation and cooperating with Toronto Police Services in their investigation. Obviously, this has had a significant impact on our staff, and we continue to provide support. Our thoughts and hopes are with the family and the child at this time. Now, that's a message for a pretty serious event, but it's a message. And what you find is, and after that Vaughan Road situation, we wouldn't let the staff talk to the media. Of course, I wasn't going out to speak to the media. We actually asked the police to clear the media before the lifeguards came out so that we weren't getting any of the lifeguards on camera. But what they ended up doing, and my lesson was, somebody needs to say something, because they ended up interviewing small children as they were coming. I remember one little girl, she could have been 4 or 5 years old. And the reporter put a microphone in her face and said, "So what happened?" And she was crying. And sure enough, that was what they aired after the incident on the news in Toronto. So I thought, we need to give them something, because if you don't give them something, they're gonna find something, and you're better off to try to control what you have. Now, all that being said, how comfortable you are taking questions is a separate matter. In this situation, I would probably make the comment really quickly, and then I would say thank you, and I would leave. If you stay at the podium, they're going to ask questions, and that, depending on how well and comfortable you are to answer those questions, that's where you want to make a decision. Okay? I know it's a lot of information, but I'm going to leave it with you. I do want to make this important point. If you have an accident, let your staff fill out their witness statements, their incident reports. Yeah, and you should have trained them on what to say and what not to say in that situation. But I would not, again, I'm just speaking on from my experience, do not interview them and keep notes afterwards. Do not interview them at all. My suggestion to you and your organization is contact your legal counsel. For many municipalities, that's inside legal counsel. Others may have outside services they use. We had a combination of both. But there's something called privileged and confidential information. What you do day to day in your operation is considered operational procedures. It's not considered confidential. It's not considered privileged under civil law, which means what you have in your files right now, whatever you have, computer, papers, whatever, is all information that you would have to surrender to plaintiff's attorneys after an incident. I didn't know that until they said, just give us everything. And I had to give them piles of paper, and they end up taking all that information and giving it to the plaintiff's attorneys. Yeah, I mean, I think it was good that we provided with them, but, had I had time to go through it again, I think I would have probably done things differently. But the difference is this. Once you have legal counsel, and the legal counsel get involved in interviewing your staff afterwards, then you could argue that, as it says there, it's privileged and confidential information, because you're preparing to defend yourself in the event of civil litigation. That's important. And then that way, if they're being interviewed and they say something that's wrong or something comes out that is not in your best interest, your lawyers can argue that it's privileged and confidential information, and you may not have to share it. You may, the judge will make the decision on that. So that's just a bit of advice. But because I interviewed my staff right away, and it turns out everything that I wrote down on those pieces of paper, I had to in fact turn over. If somebody had to give me this advice in advance, I would have said, we're not going to conduct any interviews. And again, you know this now. You may want to have a talk with your managers or supervisors about this, because I'm not sure they know it. I'm not even sure if your municipality may know it. But clearly there's a value in seeking legal advice and counsel before conducting further interviews after an incident. There might be some questions on that, and we'll see. And again, social media, social media is what it is. But just understand that whatever gets posted in social media is there forever. It's all admissible. And we've had situations where staff have gone on, social media afterwards and have said things like, "Oh, I hear there was a major accident today. I hear the staff screwed up." That is not helpful information. And I'm not even sure we can control it. But everybody needs to know that that can all be entered as part of information and evidence in the event that there's civil litigation against the organization. So I just wanted to let you know that. And again, the whole report writing thing, there's always value in ensuring that you take some time to ensure staff write their reports properly. Don't speculate. Don't assume. And I've seen, Mike, I'm almost thinking we should gather some information about some of the reports I've seen along the way about things that have been said where you kind of go, oh, I wish you hadn't written that. That's a whole separate session on its own. But, and again, the problem is, again, once they put it in writing and they put it in the file, it is part of the record. It can't change. And if you try to change or modify it or ask them for additional information, they'll have to explain that. Again, as we mentioned, contact your legal counsel right away. It's just the best thing. I'm looking at time. Okay. I was always told that the supervisor and manager responsible for any facility would be the one who would be accountable if there was a major lawsuit. The reality is, it is likely the person who's the recognized aquatic expert in the organization. The most knowledgeable person in aquatics in the organization is likely to be the one that will be selected. Because it's not your directors and coordinators or supervisors that make the decision, it's your legal counsel. And if they find out that your boss and your boss's boss don't have any aquatic background, guess what? They don't want to talk to them. They want you, if you're the most experienced aquatic person in your organization. And that means you should make money. And again, there's lots of stuff on, again, this is one of those documents, I just want you to see it, but if you look that up, the statement of claim and defenses, this is the whole procedure, which takes often years, and it's the documents that have to be produced as part of that, being prepared. So I'm going to go now, and I know this is taboo, but I'm going to go to the website here now and do this. Many of you have already done it, I get that, but do it again and go to, let's see if there, I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen. If you go to safety management there, you click on that, and then you go to the next slide, you go to resources here. And then as you go on to resources, you see this information about critical incident stress, about guidelines for supervisors following a critical incident, and about the major incident management checklist. That information is all available. And I would suggest you look at it, you print it off, you have it available. I used to carry this stuff around with me in my car in a file under my seat in the event that I needed it, because I did a lot of traveling with the number of facilities I had. But again, don't ever underestimate the amount of information or what information you may need. And if you have it in, again, if you read it in advance and you're comfortable that you have all the information, then great, good for you. But if it raises questions about things that you haven't considered or you don't have, then it's worth looking into that further. And again, I've always said it's really good to have a conversation with your boss to make sure they understand, what your role might be if there's ever a major aquatic incident. I think I always joke around that. So two kinds of people in the world: aquatic people and people who wish they were the same. But it is very important that we all do our parts to ensure that people that consider aquatics as part of an operation without giving it the care that it needs to manage the potential risks, I think that becomes incumbent on us to help educate them about what can happen. And again, and you don't want it to happen like what happened to us, where after our first major accident, people kind of went, "Oh yeah, this is serious stuff." Yeah, it is serious stuff, life-changing stuff. And for organizations, it can be life-changing and financially ruining. So it's important care. Nico, I'm going to take questions if we have. I'm trying to stick close to our 10-minute rule, and again, I flew through a lot of that information. But do we have any questions? And Nico, I cannot see you right now if you're there.
I am here. Let me.
Okay.
Here.
And I can flip back to any slides that people might want to see as we go.
Absolutely. I'll direct everyone over to the chat box, and while they're typing, I just want to thank you. There was points there where I was holding tears back. So.
Well, again, this is again, I joke around about two aquatics and people who wish they were aquatic. So when I did the YRAC session yesterday, somebody said, well, because I've said it, risk managers will say the pools are so dangerous, you shouldn't have them. Well, and then I remember somebody saying, well, then, maybe we shouldn't have swimming pools in public environments. And I thought, every healthy community has swimming pools. It's part of the, community health. It's what we do. But the danger is when we build them and they're dangerous and we don't want to staff them appropriately, or we're going to build them, we need to manage them effectively. We need to make sure that aquatic staff are given the tools and resources to be able to manage them effectively. And that's a critical part of the operation.
Agreed. Would I be able to get you to fly over to one of the slides that has a screenshot of the website? Someone had just asked where we could find this recording. I can kind of guide them, but it might be easier to show them as well. So under that safety management tab on the top, you see I guess the rust colored bar on the left. If you go over to, I believe it should be under either resources, that's where you're going to see it at the very top of the page with the recording as well and the title. And
now I think, Nico, from this slide, I think they've actually added one more category. I think management training might be up there. But again, it's in safety management on the top.
Safety management.
Resources
correct.
On the side. And then as you get into the resources, this information will pop up.
Yeah. We have another question here. Can we go back to the screen with the emergency response kit, please? I think that's a little bit further back. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this really came about because it was like 2 Fridays in a row, just before my full-time staff were leaving, that we were seeing these people running down the hallway with their skate blades on and their things, and I was like, what's going on? Oh, somebody just fell on the ice. And it was like, we need to work better with our rink staff to ensure that they know that we can help. So that's what we made.
And while I guess while we have this on the screen, there's another one that came in. So we're having a lot of issues with adult non-swimmers thinking they can swim and not caring with what lifeguards say, especially now they are young. How do you advise to navigate this?
Well, the nice thing about my facilities, for Age Corps, for example, this happened all the time, and I'm in the building. So they would call me, and I would come down, and I would have a stern conversation with somebody, and one of the things we dealt with is people didn't want to get out of the spa. They were staying there too long, and they were elderly, and we were worried about their health. And that's where, again, I think you do your part to try to warn them of the dangers, and then you ask for your help from your supervisors and managers beyond that. And, again, if they're clearly not understanding their responsibilities, that's where you can, I think it's fine to kick it up a notch, ask them to come in for an interview or a meeting. If they're not prepared to take care of their own safety, then, and the argument is, and we've seen this before, where, after an incident, we said we warned them a number of times, we told them a number of times of the danger, and then lawyers say, well, then you did warn them a number of times. So you, in fact, heighten your responsibility to provide the care for them. And the dangers or the injuries were caused by you failing to recognize or helping them understand the seriousness of it. So that's a good example. We've ever mentioned that, and you want to go offline and talk about that, please do. But don't ever be afraid to ask for your supervisors and managers for further support on that. And again, as always, document.
Gary, I might recommend maybe going back to one of the first 3 slides where we have your email as well, in the event we don't get to all the questions. I know we're still waiting for some to come through, but there was another question whether or not the recording is going to be posted. It will be found there under safety management and resources, the side tab.
Yeah, and again, Nico, I'm retired. I mean, what do I say? I'm retired from the city. I've not retired from the Lifesaving Society. I always hold it near and dear to my heart. And I've always said that if there's anything I can ever do that will enhance safety in our facilities, then, I'll do that. Again, I'm not resigning I'll still continue to do sessions and volunteer wherever I can. I'm just not holding a position on the board of directors anymore. But I still don't want to hang around with like you and Mike Shane and those guys too, although you're a little bit challenging sometimes.
Try not to be. Any more questions before we might close it off? Again, I'll remind that, let's see here. Okay, so we have one that popped up. So regarding open water, do you have suggestions of how to enhance lifeguarding in these kinds of settings?
Probably Scott Ruddle asking that question, I bet. Just kidding. Again, and I remember taking my NL waterfront option years ago. It's this is in terms of just responsibility and liability. When you invite people to the beach, there's a heightened responsibility for their care. And again, whether you have lifeguards or not, just make sure there's enough safety and adequate resources in the event there are emergencies. But again, it's what I call the double-edged sword. And we had an incident a couple of years ago in Toronto where at Bluffers Park, we had lifeguards out, I think, until 7, I'm not sure what time it was. But sure enough, lifeguards post the signs, they leave the beach, and then shortly afterwards, 2 young men drowned. And again, then the family suggested that, well, had we done our jobs and actually had lifeguards there longer that day, that these young people wouldn't have drowned. Well, again, it's what do you do? And then there's some argument that, well, if we don't have any lifeguards at all, then our liability is even lessened. Well, it might be, but you're also probably drowning more people. So it's a bit of a quandary, but I do say that if you're going to, put the resources into lifeguarding waterfronts, which I think is a great idea, because people certainly after COVID or during COVID were flocking to our waterways, then you need to be properly resourced. And again, as I always would mention, where you're not sure about the operation or areas of safety, always ask the Lifesaving Society to conduct a comprehensive safety audit, where they can come and give you all the information you need to ensure that you're operating to the standard of care that is reasonable.
Gary, I'm seeing we have 2 minutes left. We also have 2 questions that rolled in.
Yeah.
So first one, so NL guards in provincial parks, maybe 2 of them have them. Is there any reason that the province doesn't have them guarded? So provincial parks.
Well, again, the age-old question about why did they get rid of the guards on Wasaga Beach? And, I won't speculate. Well, maybe I will speculate. Again, I think it's expensive to provide lifeguards on waterfronts. And I'm sure some would argue that, in fact, you're heightening the level of care that you have to provide to people, which I think is the right thing to do. But I mean, I camped for years, and I think, I used to go to Silent Lake Provincial Park, and on all those beaches, you have that big, huge sign that says, no lifeguards. Parents, children are your responsibility. It's big and it's bold, and it's out there, and And that really, at the end of the day, should be the most important thing, regardless of whether there's lifeguards or not. Parents should be properly educated on their responsibilities to supervise their children in, on, and around the water. And as I saw down south this year, there's a lot of parents that don't, and that's unfortunate, and that's a battle for us. So.
Next question here, and there's some great comments, so I encourage everyone to check out the chat section. But are the pool regulations consistent across the country? For example, the 1:30 ratio that you mentioned.
No, they're very different. Which is why I think it's really critical that the Lifesaving Society develops standards that are recognized and practiced. Again, there, and we also have a national standards. Again, to this day, and I'm a little disappointed that we do not at this time have a national, and I'm sure, unless I'm missing something, Mike, do not have a standard nationally recognized admission and supervision standard for children. It's different in each province. So it raises the question, shouldn't they all be treated the same? But Nico, maybe my closing point is, you know what? I don't care about the regulation. What I care about is, again, as I said before, regardless of how many lifeguards and how many people in the pool, can somebody see all points of the pool, including the pool bottom all the time? If we're building these massive facilities and don't have enough lifeguards, that's a problem. If we're building, smaller facilities where we're properly, positioning lifeguards where they should be, then that's what matters. So regardless of 1 to 75, 1 to 100, the question is, can that one lifeguard see those 100, those 75, those 30 people at all points of the pool, including the pool bottom? And if the answer to that is no, then guess what? You need to change something. You need to add lifeguards. You need to limit the swimming areas of the facility. You need to do something to ensure that you can adequately, supervise swimmers throughout the entire pool. And I went out to a facility in Saskatchewan a few years ago, and I was shocked to see one lifeguard posted on this massive wave pool. And I think there were 44 school-age kids in the water. There's no way that lifeguard could see all those kids. But that's the standard of it. It's easy to sit here and toot my horn, but again, I just think it's, things change. And if you can't see the bottom of the pool and there's a medical emergency or, child slips off his life jacket, in moments, things can change dramatically. And that's the stuff we have to be prepared for.
Gary, thank you so much. We're right at that 2 o'clock mark. I'm all out of water-related puns, but a big thank you for today. I know your week was packed with some other commitments. Take a look at the comments, take down Gary's email. If you have any questions, he's always willing to respond. And then the quick comment about the cost of an assessment, please email Michael S@lifeguarding.com. Mike, he'll be able to get that out to you. But I think we're going to close it off here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Thursdays. Happy Fridays tomorrow, and enjoy the weekend, the long weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Gary, took it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary.